So one thing that I learned from the article Emergent Bilingual Youth as Language Brokers for Homework in Immigrant Families by Stephen Alvarez was just about teachers really empowering students to be leaders. And one quote that I pulled was the quote that says, "Emergent bilinguals build cooperative group skills when working in teams where their translanguaging practices are valued. Their translanguaging repertoires position them as leaders, able to respond effectively for communication." And I just thought this was a really good takeaway, that teachers can really choose to view ELLs as emergent bilinguals instead, and really create groups in which they can feel like they have a skill that maybe others don't, and they can use that to be leaders in their school. A second thing that I learned was from the immersion video, and I felt that the teacher in that video did show some examples of really assisting the child and being there for that immigrant student, but I also felt that I kind of learned through that the teacher also didn't provide enough support, I felt, in some of the situations, and just really felt like from that kind of enactment, just knowing that when a student works up the confidence to reach out to a teacher and ask for help, they really need it. So just responding appropriately to that. And then lastly, one thing that I learned from the interview with Eddie, Eddie kind of expressed that he felt he was always being pulled out for ELL lessons when he didn't really need it anymore, and he enjoyed being with the people that were like him, but felt that being pulled out really disconnected him from the mainstream classroom. So I think that I just kind of learned from that to always try to keep ELL students in the mainstream classroom as much as possible, and only pull them out if they really need it. For the things that surprised me from the learning materials for this module was just the quote from the Translanguaging Practices and Perspectives of Four Multicultural Teens, or Multilingual Teens, sorry. It says, "Although scholarship on language learning and bilingualism suggests that an individual's first language can support the acquisition of a second, and students' heritage languages can be productively integrated into English as a second language in content area classrooms, English-only instruction continues to be the norm in most U.S. schools." And again, we've talked about this a lot, just that English-only instruction is really normal in our schools, but it's still surprising that students' first languages aren't really valued a whole lot in classrooms, and I think that's just something we as educators can work on changing, and just valuing their first language. And then something that surprised me from just the example of Manin, I know I'm not pronouncing that right, but she wrote about how she always thinks in her native language, and then writes in a second language that is not English. So just keeping that reminder that like most students, if English is their second language, they're probably thinking in their native language, maybe writing, taking notes in their native language. So that was kind of surprising to me, but also just something that we need to be keeping in mind as educators. And then the last thing is something that I'm still mulling over and would like to learn more about. I just pulled the quote. It says, this is from the Emergent Bilingual Youth as Language Brokers by Stephen Alvarez. It says, "Positioning students like Nico as emergent bilinguals rather than as English language learners reorients language standardization from deficit models to linguistic abilities and creative practices like language brokering." And again, that's kind of just using these students' skills to empower them instead of kind of labeling them as less than, or maybe like needing more assistance or help. And just something that I'd like to think more about, just the different ways that we as educators can use these skills to really empower students and give them leadership positions, instead of pulling them aside and making them feel like they're behind their peers or anything like that. So just something that I would like to think more about and get some more thoughts and ideas on how educators can really incorporate students in different groups and more positions where we're empowering emergent bilingual youth.